What is going on? Welcome back to Financial Journey. So today I want to talk about SoFi. So with all the positive catalysts, with all the bullish signals, it is still having a lot of suppression and being pulled down. And we're going to talk about some factors why. In addition to that, I will go over some updated data points very relevant to a lot of investors and tie it all together with some technical analysis at the end. But before I get into any of that, all I ask, smash a thumbs up, subscribe, do all that fun stuff. If you do like my channel and support the growth, take a look at my memberships, link in the description below, or just hit the join button at the bottom of the screen. And one final thing I want to bring to your attention, there is a new broker massive promo just for March, and you can click on the link below, sign up, you get one free stock valued up to $3,500 by doing absolutely nothing, and technically if you just deposit $1, you get another free stock, again valued up to $3,500, and you also get one share of NEO. Link is in the description below, take advantage of that offer. But with that said, let's get right to it. So looking at the intraday chart, as you can see, it's largely down, but yet the NASDAQ is up 2.87%. So there has been a discrepancy, and especially in my last couple of videos, there is a lot of bullish signals when it comes down to SoFi. And unfortunately, I do get a lot of pushback saying it can't be always bullish all the time. Why are we going down? So I'm going to be talking about why we're actually going down, why it's being suppressed. You can see on the live ticker to my left, currently it is actually down right now while I was talking. Currently 26 million as far as volume, average is 42.7. So technically over the last little bit, there's been significant volume. So that's something to keep in mind. Block volume, 3.7 million shares being purchased by institutions today alone within the first 2 hours of the trading day. So it's a little bit odd. It is odd to say that technically on a daily basis, there's a huge amount of institutional ownerships and a lot of institutions getting in, and there is a lot of volume. So the fact that we're actually going down and being suppressed, yet the broader market is surging, always makes a lot of investors question, like, what is going on? What is happening with SoFi? So I'm going to go through a lot of different things. So we all do know that there's a huge amount of catalysts that came forward when it comes down to SoFi more recently. So with the charter news, that is the biggest news of them all. Then their earnings. Their earnings was a killer earnings, but despite all of that, unfortunately, there is a lot of manipulation happening with SoFi. So that's one thing I am seeing whenever there is good news that's coming out. There's always a couple of articles that follow that are very bearish. Usually just to kill momentum, and that's just my personal opinion. But again, when it came down to the earnings, Bank of America did downgrade SoFi for no reason whatsoever, saying that the good news is already reflected in the price. So that basically killed any momentum that SoFi had. In addition to that, more recently, Nodo. So Nodo technically on March the 4th did buy 15,000 shares at $9.96. And right now as well on the 7th, they bought 15,350 shares at $9.72. So whenever a CEO buys into the company, that is a huge catalyst, but yet this did absolutely nothing for the stock. So that definitely gives a lot of, again, investors a little bit more of a questionable feel. So at the end, there is a lot of different factors that's causing SoFi to go down. I'm just going to go over short interest because short interest has been relatively high. It did reach a peak of 22%. Right now it is currently at 1640, down roughly about 5% from 1 week prior. Utilization is still 100%. So that means 100% of the available shares to short are currently out. So that is something to keep in mind. Also, if you ever have any questions about any of these stats or anything I'm talking about, drop me a comment in the description below. Also, on a day-by-day change, it has gone up 0.12%, which works out to be 298,000 shares being additionally shorted. Cost to borrow is fairly low right now as well, so 2.54%. And that's one thing as well. I do find this a little bit more manipulation. So in case you guys do not know how shorting works, is technically you get market makers. So you get brokers who have SoFi. You can loan your shares to those brokers, then they can ultimately short them. Hopefully I explained that correctly. So ultimately, other banks is responsible for shorting SoFi. So this is why they are, in reality, we have a relatively high short interest, because those banks and brokers aren't really charging shorts as much as they should be. So right now, they're only charging 2.54% for them to maintain their position at a 1640 as far as short interest. That is a relatively low cost to borrow because, again, it is other banks. They could be in one way or another trying to bring down SoFi because it is a little bit more incentivizing for a short to enter into SoFi with paying very little. So that's something as well, just more on the back burner. But again, like I said, there is a lot of bullish signals coming from SoFi, more specifically the options activity over the last little bit. So options activity right now, there's $158,000 worth of options being done today. Unfortunately, today is 0%. So that's one thing as well to keep in mind. But over the last little bit, 66% 100% positive with 1.9 million. That was yesterday, and 94 million all last week with 58% positive. I do anticipate this to change considerably for today because 158,000 is by no means what it should be as far as par. So I do anticipate a lot more calls to be purchased as far as options today and bumping this number up from 0%. But again, options activity has been very hot when it comes down to SoFi. So again, a lot of manipulation in reality is happening to SoFi. That's one thing. So outside of manipulation though, there's only one point that's causing SoFi to go down, and that is because of this. So this is updates based on their last earnings with balance sheet highlights. Total cash equivalent short-term investments 505 million, total long-term investments 589 million, total debt 4.18 billion. So that as well, that alone is the amount of debt is what's causing a lot of concern for SoFi and what's causing it to go down, because that is relatively a lot of debt. In order for them to bring that down, they will ultimately have to dilute or do some form or do something along those lines, and that unfortunately is not investors' favorite thing is to hear. So this is well right now, especially given the circumstances of where we are going in the economy, and yes, theoretically the sector that SoFi is in, they should flourish with higher interest rates, and we all know tentatively on March the 16th the Feds are making a rate decision, and it does look like their anticipation and that their forecast is going to be a 50-point increase. So that as well is something for us to keep in mind. When that is done, that ultimately means that this 4.18 billion in debt is going to balloon. And yeah, they do have a lot of agreements as relatively low interest, but majority isn't. So that's something for us to as well keep in mind. And again, I don't really know the exact breakdown of all this debt, but when it comes down to overall debt, a lot of investors just see this number and focus on that. So that is one thing. Let me know in the comments below if you do personally know the breakdown of this 4.18 billion and if majority of which is fixed on a certain term on when it is. And I have saw some vague things, but relatively low. So that as well will go back to this. But regardless of all that, that's one of the biggest and only things outside of manipulation that's causing a lot of fear within for SoFi and what's causing it to be held back. And that's the sad truth, because SoFi should be well above $15 hands down, especially post earnings. They had amazing earnings, and I completely disagree with what Bank of America said, and I even did several videos on this, that right now there is a lot of manipulation, and once we actually break out of that, we have and can have a very good short squeeze, especially considering again 100% utilization, because that is a very big point to keep in mind, with also a relatively high short interest. But with all that said, I'm just going to tie it all together with some technical analysis. So at the 50, 100, 200-day moving averages, Bollinger Bands, RSI, stochastic, and momentum. So looking at momentum, so you can see broadly number of buyers have been going down, so that as well is a little bit more of a cause for concern. Stochastic, there is that deviation, red line above the black, so showing overall a little bit more of a bearish sentiment, but right now we are at 30, which is very low for stochastic. RSI is also at 38. Looking on the actual chart, still lower potential of the Bollinger Band, having a lot of resistance unfortunately, and whereas the other growth stocks in comparison are already rolling from the lower to the higher potential of the Bollinger Band today. So this is as well that's causing a little bit more concern when it comes down to SoFi in specific. But at the end of the day, it is what it is. There's mixed concerns when it comes down to the technicals, but there overall has been a lot of bullish signals to show that we are relatively at the bottom. So regardless of all that, I personally do feel that this is a great time to buy in, because depending on your time horizon, those investors that are patient enough and that can weather the actual manipulation and things like that, you are going to be very profitable. Keep in mind though, I'm not a financial advisor. Do your own due diligence at the end of the day. With all that said though, let me know your thoughts on SoFi in the comments below, and if you have been buying recently, give yourself a shout out in the comments. If you haven't already, smash a thumbs up, subscribe, do all that fun stuff, greatly appreciate that. If you do like my channel and support the growth, take a look at my memberships, link in the description below, or just hit the join button at the bottom of the screen. With all that said, appreciate you guys watching, and let's all make a lot of money on SoFi.